Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Welsh Republic podcast, episode 124 today. And I am here with my guest, Simona. How are you doing today, Simona?
Hi, nice. Thanks for having me.
You know, Simona, what have you been up to today? Anything much?
Now, legally in Italy, just vacationing, enjoying Italian espresso, and that's the dolce vita.
Oh, that sounds so cool. Well, I bet you're having more warmer weather than you are here in New Zealand. Oh, it's freezing in New Zealand at the moment. I've
I
never.
wish I was freezing. This is so hot here. I mean, I can barely breathe. So I wish we could switch weather.
What's the temperature over there?
In Celsius, we sometimes we get to 41, 43 Celsius. It's just too much for me. So, yeah.
Oh wow. When I used to go not Italy, but the south of France, it used to get very hot there during the summer, but I would love to go to Italy one day. I love to go to Sicily, love to go to Tuscany, beautiful place. Love to see the cathedrals there. Is Rome any good? Or is it gone a bit, ugh?
I think the best season to visit Italy would be by the end of September at this point because this has been the worst summer in a long time. I mean, literally hard to enjoy.
Oh, I can imagine that with. So, Simona, tell us about yourself. A lot of people know you from interviews. You've been on quite a few, political people shows. You were you're a lawyer. You were in European Parliament in Brussels from 2019 to from 2009 to 2016. You were at one time you were accused of, a long time ago, of your husband about being like a Russian. As from the Durham report. You've done a lot of political work, with people, and you also do like modeling, and you're an actress. So tell us about yourself, Simona. Like, how did you get into politics? What was, your favorite, politician growing up that really led you into politics? And yeah, tell us about yourself.
Thank you very for this interesting question. So I was into politics far before my name was known for being actually accused with insanity, like being a Russian spy. I studied law and specialized in international law. So I very young I started my internship at the European Union, first at the European Commission, then European Parliament, and I was there an administrator of a parliamentary body, which is, of course, a legal work to go through the legislative proposals on different judicial committees, parliamentary committees. I started with URI, which is jurisdiction committee, so pretty legal, up to and my career at the European Parliament to the presidency office, secretariat of bureau and quaestors, where actually I was working with the president of the European Parliament at the time, Martin Schulz, and the 14 vice presidents. And I was in charge of the policies on international child abductions. It was a very interesting work that, of course, taught me a lot about international law and applied to specific cases which are also very particular, because when children are involved or family are involved, of course, your legal work has a different meaning because you are dealing directly with something meaningful to human life. After this experience, I shortly worked for this London Centre of International Law Practice, which was a very shady place in London, and I testified about that during the Mueller probe, and that's what really dragged me into the Russiagate. There is a coincidence of me being like started dating at the time. The one who's my husband today, Giorgia Papadopoulos, who was foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign in 2016, who also had worked for the London Centre of International Law Practice a few months before I joined. So this was, let's say, the connection between the two of us and the element of interest for Mueller on my persona, because I knew one of the key players at the time of the Russiagate. I don't know much familiar, you or your audience are with the story, but his name is Joseph Mifsud, and is this Maltese professor who basically started the crossfire hurricane operation. So I testified my personal knowledge about this person, my understanding of his connection, and so I genuinely cooperated with investigators to help them build up this. The connecting the dots. But what happened that since I started to get involved with the media, my first interview with ABC News with George Stephanopoulos, and then I joined also CNN, Fox News, and all major.
You also went on Tucker Carlson. That was a good interview.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Thank you so much. So as a result of this appearance, they start to vehicle this misinformation that I would be a Russian agent. So you would find thousands and thousands of people like starting to say she's not Italian, she doesn't look Italian, she doesn't sound Italian. Probably because Americans have a limited understanding of what an Italian looks like or sound as, because they still think that stereotypical Italian is a godfather type of figure. So speaking with this accent, the Sicilian accent, or looking like in a certain way. So it was pretty hilarious in the beginning, and I became sort of concerning.
I saw in one of the interviews you mentioned how, like, when you were in America at one stage, like your family, like I think it was CNN or a media company came after your family and were harassing your family. Like when you were going through the allegations against you, how did it feel like to handle that situation with your family getting harassed and like getting all the threats from people? How did you cope with it? And like, how did it take why did it take the Durham report so long to come out when so many people knew it was just full of rubbish?
Well, that has been a very crazy moment on our lives, because, of course, imagine being two Italian people raised their Italian daughter in an Italian setting and with an Italian birth certificate, would at some point they found themselves presenting my birth certificate and pictures of me as a child, my setting and my uh, everywhere at my schools and my university records and everything like that, just to prove something which is so obvious and shouldn't even be challenged. I mean, if you're talking about intelligence agencies, trust me, it's so easy to understand where somebody come from, and it's such a basic check that it sounded to me like a machine put in place just to put fuel on these rumors rather than a genuine investigation. So, at some point of my life, I found myself in the position to prove my origins, to prove my nationality, and to prove my family was real. I mean, like, this was crazy. And of course, I had to deal with of course, paid trolls. One of them actually was recently caved in a labor lawsuit in the UK for targeting the conservative people and spreading nothing but misinformation, who truly took a kind of an obsession over my case and started to twist every single aspect of my life, spreading blatant lies. And in a moment in which I even contacted a lawyer, they told me, when you are public figure, as they believed I was at the time, it's very difficult to challenge this misinformation, or in this context is something that eventually we can fight later on. But the impact at the time was crazy. And as I said, it's like waking up and being in a position to defend yourself by insanity. And it's like, I'm done arguing with madness. So I think by now people believe I'm Italian finally, but whatever. I mean, even if I'm not Russian, even if I was Russian, the point was not my nationality. The point is to prove I had anything to do with Russia. You can be, or anything to do with the election of process of the United States. Again, I had nothing to do with that. I even met my husband after that Donald Trump was actually elected. So I had absolutely nothing to do with the campaign. Zero. So my involvement was so forced and so mediatic that I really struggled to understand why they even would give me so much importance. That was the real angle.
I know what you mean. So When you look at like, how did it feel to see your husband get pardoned by Donald Trump? How did that feel for you?
Feels like a great relief, even because I was vocally and directly asking for this pardon since the day before even he reported to prison. I was on Fox News, I was on CNN, even with Jake Tapper asking for a pardon. And I must say, even the liberal media at the time gave me a lot of space to make my point. I mean, I have actually a tremendous esteem of Jake Tapper working for CNN. It was really, I think he's a great journalist, and I think he really even gave me platform to tell my story, even if my telling my story at the time was conflicting with any narrative CNN was carrying on about the Russia collusion. So I must say I don't have this opinion of the CNN or even Ari Melber on MSNBC or other. Of course, then when the narrative became overtly shifting in a certain direction, then I became a guest only of conservative media. And but besides the political troll, as I said, as this young guy was just like really an expert and definitely not a journalist, who were pushing this narrative so hard, or ABC News at some point carrying this investigation with my parents to check on my identity, my background, etc. I didn't experience before a bad. Yeah, I went also on the View, which is also known to be liberal. I mean, I was treated with.
Oh, you went on The View. Oh, that's really interesting. Wow.
Yes, and I could tell my side of the story, and that's what I believe media should be. Besides the political views everyone has, the ability to tell your side of the story without any political censorship, let's say, because everybody then embrace their own opinions. It's what really we expect from news outlets. But then this became so polarized, so crazy that you see even the media playing just becoming team player. But you know, it's also about a personable approach when you are face to face to another human being, and then you realize we're just two human beings having two different opinions. So that's my story. Do you want to tell my story? And that's what all it comes about. Of course, I disliked the fact that even the media are politicized, and are politicized in a very, very aggressive way. Most today more than let's say 15 years ago, at least for what I learned, and in America much more than I think even in my country or in Europe as a whole. That was a kind of intense, very very intense, and also don't forget I came from myself from this political background. That all my political background was completely neglected by everyone. Nobody cared who I was. I became this person they made of me at a specific moment. Like the moment I go on Stephanopoulos, I become another person. Nobody knows I was a lawyer, for example. Nobody knows I was working for the European Parliament for so long. Nobody knows I was a trainee in American law firms, so where I was actually a pretty normal young professional who had worked their career up, like with very, very a lot of commitment. So when I found myself into this madness where my entire life and careers were rewritten and redefined by my hobbies. Hobbies, for example, like acting. Yes, acting and painting. I mean, always my hobby even before. But
Who would you say is your favorite artist of all time, like Italian artist, and your favorite, like painting of all time that you love from history?
well, I really, really love Van Gogh, which is not Italian, he's French, but well, not even French, it's like Netherlands. But I love him because he has this, when you don't can distinguish the things, your surrounding, and is floating a little bit. I'm a myope, I don't see very well. I wear contact lenses or glasses, so it gave me some sort of this vision when I don't wear them. So everything is not defined. Italian wise, I love classics. I love classics. I love Botticelli. Botticelli is absolutely my favorite one. I love the harmony, the elegance, and the so delicate in his representation. And it's a must. It's like a classic. So I am very much into the classic. But I also like most modern form of expression. For example, when it comes to America, I love Rothko, which is just like these paintings where like just one color or just this feelings given by this powerful colors he put on the tail.
Mhm. So, speaking about your artwork, so when you were in like European Parliament from 2009 to 2016, and you were being a lawyer at that time too, when you were being a lawyer and working in the European Parliament, what would you say, like, what advice would you give to someone like who's wanting to become a lawyer and like wanting to become a lawyer for the first time? And what would you say, is so different working for the like what would you say like the European Union like parliament that you're working? What would you say like would you say it was less corrupt then? What differences have you seen from then? And what things do you not like about it now that you think is just disgraceful?
Well, I think that the European Union is an incredible idea, had an incredible potential. But when we talk about the legal aspect of the functioning of the European Union, I was really disappointed to see that this interjudicial cooperation between member states was failing all the side. With the implementation of their principles, it's a real issue of the European Union. And I was very frustrated, for example, as an attorney, where I was trying to implement certain rule of laws that were enforced. Try to enforce them. For example, a judicial decision in France that we had effects on Italian citizens. All this system of basic implementation of judicial cooperation is failing. So that's what really disappointed me. I don't think there is a wonderful project on the side, there is implementation on the other side, and implementation is not working. And at least at the time I was working in the European Union, that was my feeling, and the frustration of being capable to truly help people, mostly in these cases of international child abduction, where there are rules put in place to facilitate the return of the child who has been abducted, but there are courts on the single member states that don't comply with those rules, and there is no way to basically enforce them by central level, because the European Union is lacking a constitution right now, is lacking an army. So it's a federation of different countries probably agreeing upon certain policies, but not functioning as a union. That was exactly my opinion. So that's my opinion right now, and that's why I think this project must be either reset or improved, or definitely rebuilt in an effective way.
So, what would you say, in your opinion, was your greatest achievement that you did being a lawyer and being like in the European Parliament?
Well, I definitely think that my time working for cases of international child abduction and bringing back all these children to their parents, or even participating into studies with other institutions like for example, like universities like John Hopkins University in Washington D.C., where we were sitting around the table, all experts from all around the world, and putting together the best policies to help those cases of international child abduction. This is something that actually really was a meaningful work. I really missed it actually, and it's bringing back children. It's not just dealing with policies; it's just dealing with helping human lives, helping people, and that's definitely my biggest satisfaction.
When you look at all the cases that you did with helping, like sex trafficking victims, like you mentioned, or finding missing children, what would you say out of all the cases that you encountered was the most like heartbreaking, emotional case that really, hit you emotionally?
Well, I was actually dealing with international parental child abduction, so probably was less scary than sex trafficking or child trafficking itself. So it was like in another situation where the child was abducted to another parent, but the saddest situation where, of course, when children were physically abused by one parent, and the reason of the abduction was to save the child. The other parent felt the need to save the child from the other parent's abuses, and this was the saddest situation. I remember this really sad case of this also sexual abuse sometimes, or physical abuse, and these are definitely the cases that sadden me the most, and the work that hardest on. And of course, as you can imagine, there is no escape for these children, and being in foster cares with parents that are not fit to be parents, of course, but are definitely abusive in many ways. And that's probably the category of case that really concern me the most.
So when you look at speaking of that, like right now, how does like the political system work in Italy? Like, is Italy a democracy? Is it a constitution? And how do you like look at is it Giorgia Meloni, right? The Italian Prime Minister,
Yes.
Giorgia Meloni? Giorgia Meloni, like what would you say has been her greatest achievement so far? And what would you say has been her greatest failure so far?
Well, Italy as a republic, and of course, I think we can say we are one best example of Western democracies based on our constitution and our voting system. But I think Giorgia Meloni, first and foremost, I'm not a feminist in conventional way, but let me remind you that she's the first woman prime minister, which itself is a big achievement in I think in any country, but also in Italy, where we never had a female prime minister, also a young prime minister, because the young probably with Renzi, she's been the youngest. She has worked a way up from the opposition to lead to become the prime minister. I think she's a great leader. I think her policies, despite all the stigma she suffers by the, let's say, most of media, most of disinformed people. She's everything but a dictator, or a dictator like. She's actually a common sense person who base their policies on what's best for Italy. Now, when it comes for Italian policies, national policies, I think she's absolutely doing the best work, the best job into improving, the employment. Also, when it comes to preserve certain benefits, but not have these benefits abused by the system. For example, we're talking about reddito di cittadinanza, which is this welfare situation which was impacting very badly the employment market, rather than helping the people in distress. So she's doing an absolutely great job when it comes to immigration as well, containing immigration, and trying to, of course, not closing our borders, because even immigration policies in Europe are not national policies. We have a common border, but trying to distributing responsibility between the member states, and also trying to make plans to actually help those people, rather than just have them in and degenerate into really inhuman conditions. And that's a really good. When it comes to foreign policies, I have slightly different opinions, but I think she's doing, of course, her best as well, according to her own vision.
What would you say about like Italian politics? Who would you say is the greatest prime minister like that Italy has ever had? And what would you say that makes Italian politics like a lot? What would you say like that every country should follow from Italian politics that makes Italian politics so unique compared to the rest of the world, like America, Britain, and all the other countries?
Well, first of all, I don't think there is any absolute model for everybody, because every country history deserves, every politics reflects the problems and the history of the country we are dealing with. So, of course, Italy and United States are very different in the history, as Italy is very different from other countries in the same European Union. But when it comes to Italy and our history and our economy and our projection to the world, I think, and I know many people will probably disagree with me, but I think the best prime minister we had is Silvio Berlusconi. I believe he improved absolutely our economy in an unprecedented way, while we talk about scandals all the time, right? But let's step aside by scandals. I don't care about what people do in their personal life, as long as that doesn't become a crime. I care about the results, and the results has been a flourishing economy, and the results has been also an important setting the image of Italy as an important player abroad and doing the interests of Italy. Even, for example, in this situation of conflict between Russia and Ukraine, of course, Italy's or other European countries' interests are completely different than the ones of the United States. So we can't possibly even thinking to overlap policies or take one model. That's it. But of course, right now, I think Giorgia Meloni is a great leader too. I don't like people who I like actually leaders like Giorgia Meloni who has an idea and has a plan, makes some points, some priority to implement and work toward them. Many political campaigns are done to please the audience to gain votes. Other political campaigns are done to make a change. And you know the difference when they stick to those policies. What I think about Giorgia Meloni's strength right now is the fact that she, and one actually thing that should be taken as a model abroad is the ability to set your priority and your values straight without the dictatorship of the politically correct. Let's say when it comes to conservative values, which she carries on, of course, she affirms the value of the families, the values of God, and the values of the country. So she's not afraid to face criticism or please anybody else but an agenda when of course it's done respectfully for everybody. I think our government is still very respectful of any religion, any diversity. We're just protecting what is the identity of the Italian culture. And there is absolutely nothing discriminating about that. It's just self-affirmation and tolerance and inclusion of everything else. While actually in the United States, we are assisting to discrimination of whoever is trying to carry on certain type of values just because probably the new raising trends feel threatened by those established values. Well, actually, we should learn to coexist and tolerate each other. That's a real democracy. That's a real tolerance.
What are the major political parties in Italy?
We're so many. I think we're. That's also my. It was very difficult for me to explain to United States. I was running for a certain party that we have over 20 parties, political parties. Of course, the major right now is Fratelli d'Italia. In terms of numbers, we have PD, Democratic Party, and that's are the major one. But there are also a lot of satellites. And anti-system parties and parties that locate themselves not in the left, not in the right, but in the middle, or don't locate themselves anywhere. So it's pretty confusing. I think that's something I would change about Italian politics. I think it makes no sense to have all these parties. I think we should come to, a little assemblare. That's not my English, is bad. Just trying to define some political families and include and have less parties. It's probably less confusing for the voters.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at right now Italian politics, right, but you look at like the inflation right now that is hitting Europe, a lot of people are saying that the European Union, a lot of countries are getting fed up with it. A lot of countries want to go independent. They're tired because a lot of the European Union, they say, has been hijacked by the globalists and the international bankers, like the Rothschild Rockefellers and all that. Many people predict that, that the United States dollar, when that collapses, when the Chinese yuan becomes like the reserve currency, many people predicting like the euro is going to collapse. How would you feel if like the European Union was to collapse, and like, do you think Europe will be better off without it, or do you think Europe needs it?
Well, I was pretty vocal last year, precisely during the campaign, delivering one message. If the European Union as it exists doesn't evolve, then better the European Union to collapse, face the ultimate inflation and rebuild. Why do I say that? Not because I don't believe in the European Union. Of course, I've worked for the European Union for long enough to understand the potential and the benefits of the European Union. But on the other hand, I understand also that a project that is surviving years over years without evolving or establishing its foundation as a strong base to build on and also overcome the problems that we have, it makes no sense. So we're facing a lot of inflation also because when we talk about European Union, we are talking about the union of member states coming from completely different background, historical, economic, social problems. When we want to implement common policies, for example, when it comes to the war in Russia, Ukraine, we don't take in consideration all the side effects that will be different in the impact that it will have on one single member state to another, then we are lacking vision. We are lacking actually evolution. So I'm not against the European Union at all. Actually, I was also an Erasmus student, so I took from the European Union everything I am today as an international, somebody projected into international world. So I own the European Union, everything, many of the things I've done. But at the same time, because I love the idea, I hate to see this idea not properly taken care of, implemented, and being like corrected what doesn't work and flourish in a definitive way.
So right now, as we all know, right, the United States is in a very bad situation, and Donald Trump, his indictment is being done, which I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I used to be, but not anymore. But I think his indictment's ridiculous. You've got even libertarians, Greens, and also many people think it's ridiculous. When you look, what is your opinion, on Donald Trump being indicted and seeing all the persecution we're seeing, whether it is Donald Trump, whether it's Julian Assange, whether it's Ross Ulbricht, whether it's also do you know Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
Yes.
Him
I like
also,
it. I like him a lot.
him being denied from debating Biden. And, there's, Biden, and his administration, who are mostly controlled by higher ups, going after journalists, going after, political people, especially when there was one incident where he even went after, some, anti-war, some black people who were protesting, some black, I think some black populist people, he was going after them. What is your opinion to see that? And the fact, that Donald Trump could be in jail even with him being president, do you think right now that United States is, hang on, do you think right now that United States is on the verge of civil war? It's there, or do you see the United States surviving somehow and getting out of this situation?
I am first and foremost outraged to see the number of indictments of a former president, Donald Trump, timely to the start of the presidential campaign for 2024. We are witnessing, and as you said, it's not about agreeing with the man or not, no matter if you are liberal or conservative, or no matter your political views, everyone should be outraged by the weaponization of the Department of Justice and our institution to a political end. Because this is the ultimate denial of justice. It's the ultimate denial of democracy. If you don't like the man, let him run, letting people decide if either to vote or not for him. That's democracy. Democracy means to accept the result of the election, even when we don't like the person who's in power. And this is valuable for both left and right. So to me, this game on trying to cut off the winning horse, whoever believed to be the winning horse of the race, like in case of Donald Trump, or even not allow Mr. Kennedy to participate, to face Joe Biden in the preliminary debate, is a shameful symptom of a decadent system, which is imploding in itself and is damaging ultimately also the image of everything the United States represented and broke until a few years ago. Where is this biggest democracy? Where is this freedom? There is no freedom and democracy when we use our own institution, our own Department of Justice, which should be busy prosecuting crimes, not persecuting political opponents. And this is absolutely the worst face the United States of America ever had until now. And as I said, is not a partisan observation. This is something that involves the major evaluation as a whole. I mean, as I said, that you said you have not supported Donald Trump, but you still understand how wrong it is, what is going through. And also, this is a short-sighted technique because when you are so much of a target, means you're so much of a threat to what? A threat at this point to freedom. So it will definitely play on his favor ultimately, but it's very sad to see.
And let's not forget to mention, you got Nigel Farage right now.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not a fan of him, and I think though it's outrageous that he's getting his bank account closed. I mean, what is that about? I mean, just because he's got different opinions, and you got all these lefties who are saying, "Oh, it's because actually no, it doesn't matter. You should not get your bank account closed. It doesn't matter what belief you are. If you're a lefty or you're right, it's got to stop." And I just feel when you look at all these indictments, all these crazy stuff, a lot. I'm thinking to myself, when is Hunter Biden going to get arrested? When is Obama, Bush, Clinton going to get arrested for their crimes against Libya, Syria, Iraq? All those wars against humanity, for the bombing, of people in Somalia, Lebanon, and all that stuff. And what's even crazier, Simona, is, did you see that meme where every time, like Hunter Biden had something against him come out, the indictment cases would suddenly go after Trump a few days later? Did you see it? Remember that, right? The dates of that? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's outrageous what Nigel Farage is
Sorry,
going through. It's outrageous
Simona.
that there's a third system. There's not equal
Simona,
justice.
what was that again? Sorry, it was the dates, right? Can you try and I think it was the dates of Hunter Biden,
Yeah,
information in that, and then Trump's indictment. Yeah.
yeah, and you can see there is absolutely no accountability on this side, and there is extreme accountability on the other side. But accountability for what? We are again talking about the institutions that we call the deep state trying to overrule the any common sense and what the principle of democracy means, which is allowing people to run and people to decide for them. When we are interfering, we're just delivering my messages. I don't want certain candidate to run. I don't want people to vote for them. So what does it mean? Are you faking this election because you're already promoting, pushing, and deciding for other people who has to be the leader in chef? How can we close the bank accounts in a groundless basis, as in the case of Nigel Farage? How can we cut one candidate from the primary talk show, I mean, like a debate? This is just as scary, as I said, a scary symptom of the decadence of anything America and the world. It seems like the world, because we're talking about UK now, is ruled upon and standing for. So it's something like is that a civil war coming? I'm not a big fan of a revolution, but I think they're pushing people to the extreme of feeling not part of the decisional process anymore. So better to actually being honest. Why don't we say we just don't want a political system based on certain rules? We want a deep state or whatever institution, bureaucratic body rule for us and decide who to place there. Change the system, don't fool the people. That's a stretch, of course. That's a paradox I'm talking about. But it's so blatantly obvious at this point that there is no freedom of choice and there is no democracy and there is actually political targeting. And like happened probably under the Soviet Union, we criticized so much. I don't see any difference. We put in jail people we don't like. What else? Kill them? I don't know. It's just like crazy. And as I said, it should be scary for everyone. I hope
It's
people.
like Nazi Germany too. Nazi
Yeah,
Germany too.
totally Nazi. Exactly. What's killing your opponent. Opponent is not, or journalists who say something that it's not in line with a certain narrative. That we are going back forward. And you know what's funny? Everyone who claims this is not right there is a propaganda machine coming in and it's targeted like a fascist or Nazi, which is a pure projection of what this bureaucratic body is doing. It's really disturbing, and I know people who are not as we are, as we talk, aware of the political system, probably you're just busy with their life, doing their own business, not involved in politics at all. They just watch the news and see those indictments, and they say, "Oh my God," But even those people that see all these indictments start to understand that something wrong about it. How can somebody be one of a sudden such a criminal? How can they block the bank accounts of these other of the National Farage in UK? This is just too much and too reckless, and I experienced that on my own skin. So I know exactly how they operate, but I know that this can last forever. A civil war, who knows? I'm not a big fan, as I said, of revolution, bloody revolution at all. And I believe we just should come to there is definitely ideological war taking place. Well, at some point, I think we should all agree to reset and to put aside all this animosity we have toward the men and get united toward the system. Just we want a system that is a guarantor, not a system it's a weapon to a side or another.
So when you look at all of the cases that have gone against Trump, as a lawyer yourself, how it accused him of impersonating a political officer or conspiracy to overthrow the United States government, and how they accuse, all of those, people like Rudy Giuliani of trying to turn the Georgia election or something like that. As a lawyer, if you were let's say one of Trump's lawyers and you looked at this case, you're in the court right now, what would you say, as a lawyer yourself, what would you say about these cases, which is so wrong? And how would you prove as a lawyer in your experience that it's just so full of nonsense? Why does it make no sense? Can you give a prime example of the cases?
Well, there is no evidence whatsoever they engage in any actual activity to overthrow the election. There is no evidence of faking votes. There is no evidence of promoting to fake votes. There are just random witnesses whose credibility has to be actually verified, as this person who turned on Trump on Mar-a-Lago. So my basic argument is that we, in our freedom of speech, we are free to challenge even the results of an election, which doesn't mean to overthrow the election. It doesn't translate in the promoting an insurrection. I heard and I read Donald Trump on January 6th writing to the people to go back home peacefully. Now, I agree or disagree with these players challenging the election. Challenging something is part of my freedom. It's part of anyone's freedom. I'm not talking about me personally. I have other opinion about that, but I take it a step aside. But when it comes to those accusations are politically motivated. The pattern of the involvement of all the players, so that up to Trump's lawyer, accusing Jenna Ellis, which was his attorney at the time, of being part of a conspiracy where actually he was representing a client. This is absolutely crazy, because there is no other evidence on endorsing and protecting that, what his client was represented by. So what does it mean that if I represent a client in a murder case, I become accomplice in the murder? That's a stretch on any point, and I don't see a solid rule of law supporting any of those accusations. There is not uncontroverted evidence on the table. There is just a bunch of rumors, a bunch of theory, and most of them are conspiracy theories. Basically, we are accusing people for challenging the status quo. I think there is absolutely legitimate to invite other states to make a recount if there is a suspicion of fraud. There is absolutely nothing criminal about that, and if you feel that there is something criminal about that, then you're justly silencing anyone to challenge anything. And also, the voting system in America, for me, is absolutely wrong. It should be
the United States voting system is definitely one of the worst in the first world, and it definitely, Europe has better voting system, and it needs more laws, which so speaking of that, we got maybe 5 minutes. I just wanted to ask two things. What is your opinion on like seeing, Joe Biden going to Hawaii and of course giving all of that money away to Ukraine, neo-Nazis in Ukraine, when he could be giving all of that money, so the neo-Nazis in the army in Ukraine, when he shouldn't be doing that, especially should be condemning that, when he's giving all of that money, when he should be giving all of that money to like, the homeless in San Francisco and like left-wing states and right-wing states where a lot of these states are being flooded by fentanyl and all that. And then him going to like Hawaii where the fires are dying, where he could have given all that money to help rebuild Hawaii, only giving them $70, but giving billions of dollars away to the Ukraine black hole. That's a term I saw. And what is your opinion on like Joe Biden, falling asleep on the testimonies, of the people, I saw that, Simona. I thought it was disgraceful. I think it is just absolutely disgraceful. What is your opinion to that? And also, what would be your last thing to say in this interview? First, we'll start with the Biden thing.
Sorry, I didn't understand the last cut.
The last thing is, what would be the last thing you would like to say?
Well, first of all, yes, Joe Biden, just to respond to your question, it's very unfortunate that he would prioritize not Ukraine, but his interest in Ukraine rather than being the president of the United States and allocating resources to their problems. So that's where the agenda of the America First is affirming itself even louder. When we have a situation in which a president who have, in this case, yes, evidence of corruption, we talk about information that are corroborated and have been leaked out there about all the money he has acquired with his son through offshore schemes, working in Ukraine with Burisma. Him and his son have done a lot of business over there. So again, when we talk about Joe Biden, I believe he's prioritizing not Ukraine to America, but his interest in Ukraine to America. That's a huge difference. When it comes to his performance, the fact that he falls asleep, it's just sad. It makes me think it makes me question who's behind Joe Biden. We know it's not. It's kind of the face front from too many other interests and many other people behind him, and that's what we see. Of course, it's a very weak image of the United States of America. It's very disappointing to see, and I live in the United States and experience daily the problems of homelessness on the side. Now we talk about the fires in Hawaii, the border control, and drug trafficking that comes from this. Because as I said, immigration process in America is really, really tough. And part, I'm an immigrant in America, so just to make it straight, I'm not acting like anything else than that. I mean, I know what it is, the immigration process. I know how tough it is. I know how Joe Biden is neglecting completely the massive problems the United States is experiencing right now, just to prioritize himself in his family interests in the other side of the war, and dragging the United States into this war against Russia in our continent through Ukraine. That's my understanding based on also my journalistic work in Kiev. And I know many people will disagree with me, but if you ask me about it, that's my opinion. One last thing, I believe that the agenda should win as the first priority in the United States right now is to go back to the basic principles of democracy. And it's not just about being America first, it's just to be democracy first.
A constitutional republic again, a country that is free from the bankers controlling it, the Federal Reserve, the oligarchs, the corporate interests, the one that the founding fathers fought for.
Exactly. It's not only about saying I want to focus on my interests. Actually, there is no interest you can focus on if you don't fight this bureaucratic apparatus ruling on behalf of everyone who's there. That's until you will have this bureaucratic apparatus, you won't have a real constitutional democracy, because as you can see, whoever is a voice out of the core and whoever is trying to conflict with establishment, like I believe Donald Trump has tried to do and done in the past years, and that's why I still believe is the one I would like to see as a president again. That's the only one I think is so much antagonized, precisely because he represents everything they don't want, and because he has his own decisional autonomy, which Of course, Joe Biden largely prove to do not have. Is just the puppet of a bigger system, is very comfortable over there, while actually he has a license to commit crimes. There is no investigation towards Joe Biden. There is no probably a mugshot of Joe Biden. I don't know if you're going to see one, but he definitely deserves one.
So before we go, Simona, where can people find you and where can they support your work?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. My handle is at Simona Mangiante. And then on Instagram, at Simona _Mangiante _. For the moment, these are my favorite social media when I can, I also, post all my political views, update my work, interviews, and everything you might be interested or not interested to about.
Thank you very much, Simona, for coming on. It was a pleasure having you. And everybody, please give Simona please give her all the support she needs. She's a fantastic journalist. She does very good interviews. She's very good at giving tips on stuff when it comes to law. Very fantastic. She does great content. Thank you for coming on, Simona. God bless you. It was a pleasure having you. Maybe we can do this again some other time. Sorry, we couldn't get enough time to talk.
With a great pleasure. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you and responding to your very interesting question. You're a great interviewer yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you're also a very, very talented person too. Very talented, great content. Thank you, everybody, for joining the Welsh Republic Podcast, episode 124. More shows will be coming this way next week. Thank you, everybody. Remember to like and subscribe. Take care, everybody. Have a nice day. God bless you. Bye.